Everybody, this is Dream, and we're having a video here for the NASCAR Xfinity Food City 300 at Bristol. This particular race is going to be quite interesting because there's a lot of good value options on the slate, and so then you're going to have to pair those value options with some high-end guys. Obviously, you have to average 83-33 or less in order to fit a roster here, so we have guys valued all the way up to the top, down to even the 5,000 range in the prices. So what we have to do is we got to find some good options here and build a lineup around that. So in NASCAR, you get points for moving up. So if you start 25th and finish 15th, you get bonus points for that. So it's always good to find drivers that have a good chance of getting in the top 10 and 15, and especially in races like this, where when they start farther back. And so we'll be showcasing some of those drivers, and then I'll show you the guys who I think have the best chance of winning. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get into it. So my top three drivers when it comes to their chances to winning at least. The first guy is Justin Allgaier. I don't really care where he starts. He's going to have a really good shot here, and he has got 80-point upside in this race. He's probably one of the guys that have the highest upside, regardless of where he starts. He's just been really good at this track in the past, and I think he's going to continue that in this particular race, and so I think he's in a good spot. The second guy is AJ Allmendinger. He has finished very well here in the past, and if he starts outside the top 10, that would definitely be helpful, but because he should be able to get a top 5 to top 10 finish in this race. I really like him. He's also been just driving extremely well lately, and so he's somebody I think is in a great spot for this particular race. Another guy that I think is interesting is Brandon Jones. Now, he hasn't been quite as good as the top two guys, but he has some really good finishes here, and the only catch with him is that a lot of times his price is a little bit overpriced for what his production is in the race, and so you do have to be aware of that, but he's still somebody I like who has been pretty good at getting good finishes at this track. Then we have Sammy Smith for 9,200. He's in the top 10 car. He doesn't have any Xfinity starts here, so it was hard to find real good information, but I do think that he has a chance at this particular track. He's got a good enough car to run here and do well. Sammy Smith, sorry, not Sammy Smith, I mean, that's the guy I just talked about. Sheldon Creed is running here, and he's been really good in trucks here, and so I think he's got a good chance here. This is his first Xfinity race here, but I like, he's in a good enough car that I think he can get a top 10 finish, or maybe even win the race with his car. But I think he's in a good spot, and so I think he's somebody to consider. Daniel Hemrick is another guy. Colleague Racing looks really good in this race. Other guys have done really well. He has a top 10 car, and he's finished all his races here really well, with the exception of one, and he's had quite a few races at this particular track. And then Riley Herbst, he's the last guy that's above the Mendoza line of 83-33 for this track in the 98 car. He has had some really good finishes here, but sometimes his starting position has capped his ability to pay off for his cost. So just be aware of that, and make sure to check where he's starting the race once the qualifying happens. And then once we get below, once we get below the 8,300 line, I have four drivers I think are in really great spots, especially if they get, if they get some decent qualifying positions, for bonuses that we can definitely use here. Brandon Brown is the first guy at $7,600. Now, he doesn't always finish all that great, but at this track he's been extremely good, and he's got a top 15 potential at this particular track. And if he starts a little bit farther back, 25th, that would definitely be more beneficial. Myatt Snyder is another guy I really like. He's probably one of my favorite options here, one of the two underneath this point, because he has top 15 upside, and he's had some really good points days here in the past, and he tends to start farther back, so that's usually an advantage at this particular track for some of these guys. Jeremy Clements is my absolute favorite option on the board, especially if he can start farther back, but I don't really care that much where he starts. He has a top 10 car here. He's only had one race here in 7 starts that were not very good, and that was the first race here that he raced. and every race since he's been in the top 13 or better. And so I really like him at this particular track. I think he's a kind of a sneaky option that I think some people will miss out on. So I definitely expect him to do pretty well here. He's just a guy that consistently runs and doesn't get caught up in messes and does well and then finishes the race here. And sometimes it's hard to find guys that can finish races at Bristol. Like I looked at Noah Gragson, and my goodness, he's wrecked here so many times. Joey Graf Jr., he finishes in the top 20 here a lot. In 2 or 3 of the races, he started from the very back of the pack, and he actually has about 40 to 45 point upside if he can start farther back. He's not somebody that I would use if he starts in the top 20, but he is somebody to take a consideration, if he starts like 25th or 30th, because he's got some pretty good upside to get like a 15th or so finish. And then finally, I have 4 drivers that probably will start near the back. And whoever starts near farthest back, or even the 2 that start the farthest back, are going to be guys that you want to potentially use because they have 30 to 35 point upside based on the fact that they do manage to have good finishes here. Obviously, if any of these guys start in the top 25 or maybe even top 30, they're pretty unusable at this particular track because of the risk associated with they don't have the best cars and they don't have the best driving skill necessarily, but they've done great at this track in the past. And what I mean by doing great is that they have top 25 potential in this particular race. And so let's just go through those 4 drivers. Stephen Parsons is one of them. He has 35 to 40 point upside here. He's had 2 races where he's gotten over 30 fantasy points, and if he can start near the back, and when I mean near the back, I mean in the bottom 5 positions, then he's somebody that you have to consider. Same with Kyle Weatherman. He's a guy who can finish in the top 25 if he starts near the back, and so he gets some nice juicy upside with the points. And he's a little bit capped at around maybe 30 or so points, maybe a little bit less than Parsons, but he's still a good option. And then Ryan Ellis, I was surprised to see this, but he has a lot of potential here. He's done pretty good here. He started in the back before and had 30 point upside, and so I think he's in a position where he could potentially do that again. And then finally, CJ McLaughlin. He's had some races recently even where he finished in the top 15-20, where he got 25 to 35 and even 45 points. And I think in this race, he definitely has potential to do that. He's had 2 races here, one in truck and one in Xfinity, and in both of those races he finished 26th or better and started near the back, which gave him 30 to 35 point upside. So I think we have some good options across the board here. I think it's going to be a good race, and once qualifying happens, it'll be a lot easier to fix your lineup to fit what it looks good. But for now, this is the best information that I have when it comes to where their likelihood of having a good run here. And so with that said, thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you have any drivers that you think I missed out that you think is going to do well, feel free to leave those below, and have a nice day, guys.